San Francisco Bay Area moms, Pauline here. I'm here with our longtime contributor and football mom, Sysamone.
Hey guys.
Welcome, Sysamone. We're going to be talking about some football today. So it's girl talk about football. I hope you all join us and have a lot of fun. And this video is recorded in partnership with Future for Football. So if you or your children have an interest in joining a local football or flag football team, please go ahead to their website, futureforfootball.com, for more information and find your nearest league. All right, so Simone, are you ready to talk about some pigskin?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we did a fabulous written interview with your son Ari and his teammates Devin and Kiara the other day, and they're all-star players on their local flag football team. I think it's with their middle school.
Yeah, that's correct.
Their middle school team.
Their middle school.
Great. And can you speak a little bit as to how, your son Ari, how you kind of got involved as a football mom and how he, is now a star player on the team?
I feel like flag football is a nice kind of starter point for any kid that's like really interested in major football, tackle football too.
Right.
And so this was kind of our agreement with Ari. He comes actually on his dad's side of the family. He has uncles that played football. His grandpa was football coach. He has a cousin even that made it into the NFL that got drafted.
Oh, wow.
I don't know which team, but I know they talk about it a lot. But and of course he had a natural interest for it, automatically seeing that he has people in his family who played it, watched them. And for me, right off the bat as a mom, we're all just always anxious and worried about any hard contact sports. And so his school offers flag football as a sport to play. And so this is his second season playing.
Oh, second season. Okay, already.
We figured we would test it out with flag football, see how that goes, see how he likes it. Because, the other thing with kids is they decide they do something and they're like, no, I'm over it. And then you spend all this money on sport.
Yeah, on all the equipments and all the flashy stuff.
But he loves it. He's now in the second season, and we're now talking about doing actual contact football in high school. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so do they have contact football in their middle school, or is it only
purely flag football only? Okay. But once he gets to high school age in his district, they do have actual hard contact football teams.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, is there an aspiration to to work towards a scholarship for college, or is there an aspiration
for them?
Oh, that's yours. That would really help, right?
For the most part, he just loves playing the sport. He just loves, playing with his friends on the field and things like that. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it lightly, mainly because his sister is also in sports and is core about it as well. And so the hope is he also gets excited enough to let's focus on this and work on the track towards a scholarship.
Nice.
That's my hope.
Nice. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so you guys, or Ari, grew up kind of surrounded by football. And I know, my son's only 5, and I know some of his friends are, I was speaking to some of his friends' parents, and they were already talking about, signing their kids up for flag football. And I was like, what? It starts that young? But apparently, there are a lot of leagues out there that start at, as young as 5. So would you kind of what would you speak to that? Would you recommend us kind of, if you could have done it earlier, would you have signed him up earlier? Or, are there any advice that you have for, any of the parents with very young kids who are kind of looking into doing flag football as maybe a safer alternative to tackle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I basically let my kids guide
Yeah.
me in like what
Right.
sport they want and what they want to do.
Yes.
And we did start them early, in
Okay.
little leagues of trying it out.
Yeah.
If I we started Ari early in like a baseball league just because his older
Okay.
sister had started
Right.
in that,
Yeah.
he definitely figured out right away what he was into and what he wasn't. He
Oh,
did
that's
he
fine.
did soccer, he did baseball, he
Yeah.
did lacrosse, now
Yeah.
flag football, and he's settled. He's like, I'm settled. This is what
Right.
I want to do. And
Oh, wow.
I would probably the best advice is like test out all the little leagues in terms of
Right.
sports and see what resonates with them because
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Start them early and just like expose them to everything, and
know,
then
because they'll decide on their own what's
right.
for them and what's not.
Right.
And so that's all I did. We just did some sprinkles of different sports and allowed him to kind of settle and choose what was best for him. And lo and behold, he wants to play tackle football for sure.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's great. And, I can see that he's a very popular guy on his team as well. I mean, he seems to get along with all his teammates,
Yeah.
girls and boys. By the way, this flag football team that Ari and his friends are on, this is a co-ed
Hmm. Hmm.
team. So there are actually girls who are star players, I hear, who have had touchdowns, just as many touchdowns and their quarterbacks and whatnot. So, as a woman, as a girl, like I don't know about you, but when I was young, I don't think co-ed football teams existed.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about, seeing these girls, playing alongside boys and they're pulling their weight just as much?
Yeah, it definitely makes me proud to see
Right.
how welcoming he is to
Uh-huh.
members and how open he is and like how empowering he is
Right.
with
Yeah.
his teammates and stuff. And I'm gonna give credit to me and his dad just because we do a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion activities and advocacy.
Of
Uh,
course, yes.
and so it's resonated with them and it's resonated with him. And this was actually his first year playing football. There were no girls on the team.
Oh,
This is
okay.
the first season in which there were two girls on the team
Mhm.
that joined him, and they played alongside him.
Mm.
And it was really, for me, it was like a proud moment. One, to see girls being welcomed on the team, and
Yeah,
being allowed to play the sport alongside boys, being
right.
given the opportunity to just try their skill and show that they're capable of it too. And then
Yeah.
two, to have my son be such a good like team player, because it's so easy for kids to fall into like a groupthink pattern and pick on
Mhm.
girls and like, what are you doing here? uh,
Right.
there's still those type of influences out there where it's
Yeah.
like these sports aren't for girls, but
Right.
having him advocate for them and then like
Right.
how empowering them and like bringing along his teammates to cheer them on as well. The whole team as a whole, the coaches, like they're great about it, which I can
Uh-huh.
see why those girls were doing so well on the team.
Right.
And so for me, it's a proud moment, like in two ways, just to see girls going out there and going for it,
Uh-huh.
you know, at his school, and then to see my son being one of the advocates and champions of these girls and just helping,
Right.
them feel comfortable and just supporting them.
So does the co-ed team play against all male teams as well, or do they only play against co-ed teams?
Yeah, so they play against all male teams. This whole season
Oh,
of
great.
games, it was just against other boys teams. A bunch of the other teams that they played, there was not a single girl on their team. So
Oh, wow.
on my son's team, and it just so happened there wasn't just one; there was two girls. That was
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah, and they did really well, against them throughout the season. So, it's props to you guys. And for me, it's wonderful to see because, growing up, especially, up until about middle school age, uh, there has been a lot of sports teams that I wanted to be a part of at school, but because there were no, well, I don't know if there was a rule against it, but it was just there were just no girls in those teams, and And I think even if you wanted to at the time, you couldn't
Yeah,
um, join the team, or you will be afraid to even try and ask for a spot on the
right.
team. You just feel like the opportunity isn't there. But I think with your son and their team, and how the players interact and
Hmm.
play with each other and kind of play to each other's strengths. I think that's a wonderful thing for girls, and it shows that girls are just as strong
Yep.
as boys, and like football is bringing that together. And I feel like football is such a traditionally masculine
Yeah.
sport. It's wonderful to see that we in the Bay Area, we've had a female coach
Yes.
professionally in NFL, and now we're seeing uh, co-ed flag football teams popping up everywhere across the Bay. So it's really, really encouraging. And, I would encourage any girls out there who are watching and listening to, you know, just speak up. And if you have an interest in the sport, please just ask your parents, and we can help link you up with Sysamone if you have any questions about that. But it seems like there are a lot of opportunities being created to encourage kids of all gender and of all backgrounds to kind of join football. So now I know that football really kind of brought your family together. Especially since Arya started, playing on his middle school team for the last 2 seasons. Can you speak a little bit to that, like how it's brought all that together?
Overall, I think one of the things that like football and sports does in general, it brings people together.
Right.
Whether when I was growing up, Sunday football was on every room that had a TV. Uh, and like our family just always gathered and barbecued and watched, and even if it was just a regular game for the season. And
Right.
so with Ari's football, we are two separate households.
Mhm.
We've been separated for 14 years or so. And so our kids go back and forth, but one thing that brings us together is always their sports.
Yes.
I mean, every time they have a game or even practice and stuff,
Mhm.
myself, their dad, his grandpa, his uncles, even, our dog, we
Oh,
all
wow.
come together.
Yeah.
We sit, we hang out, we watch, we chat, we shoot the shit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, technically, otherwise we wouldn't talk about too much other stuff with each other or
Yeah.
hang out. But these sporting events, these games, and even practices, it always brings us together, sitting on the bench,
Yeah.
watching the kids kind of just do their thing and just chatting and catching up and whatnot. And so that's one of the great things about it, right? Typically, when you separate, you don't do too much together. You have
Right. Yes.
your separate lives with your children. But with sports, it brings us together. It forces us to hang out too, in a way, and cheer on, our common goal, which is our
Right.
kids together.
Right. Right. So it forces everybody to participate in a
Yeah,
positive way.
yeah, exactly.
Um, and it sounds like Ari really, really loves that.
Yeah,
Especially, which I thought was a very interesting point. He especially called out his sister.
yeah,
He said he was really, really especially happy to have his sister watch him and to be
hmm
there cheering him on. As their mom, how does that make you feel?
I mean, it feels good because they're not too far in age, so
Right.
they're constantly bickering.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Ari, he's such a compassionate, sensitive kid.
Mhm.
That's part of the reason he has been so good at supporting his female members, because his
Right.
teammates, because he supported his sister in all her sports activities, her travel games, things like that, and he
Mhm.
knew how important it was to empower her, because
Right.
she was playing against boys. She was playing on boys teams, baseball teams, and going up against boys teams in the league. And he
Yeah.
understood how harsh sometimes boys can be seeing girls
Mhm.
in a male dominated sport.
Right.
And so when he found his passion with flag football and has been so serious about it,
Mhm.
his sister has been returning the favor in terms of showing up for him and,
Oh,
supporting him too, and
yeah,
just like cheering him on from the bench and whatnot,
yeah.
and just like giving him the little tidbits of tips and things here and there,
Oh,
even in terms of like having girl teammates and how to like handle that. And
yeah.
so for him, he sees his sister as like his best friend, even
Oh
though
my gosh, that's so
a
awesome.
lot of times she's the older sister and like,
Yes.
bullies him a little bit.
Yeah.
He looks up to her, and so
Oh.
to have her at, his game, like
Mhm.
it means more to him than having his parents there, honestly.
Oh, yeah, I was like, yeah, he really put a lot of emphasis on, like,
Yeah,
my sister. Oh, but that's so great to I mean, it's rare to see, especially when they're in their teen years,
yeah.
to see this kind of bond and closeness between siblings, but it seems like, football, sports really, really helped reinforce, the great bond that they already obviously have, but it really helped them reinforce that even more, and so I think that's something that will bring with them for the rest of their lives, they
Exactly.
will
Like
translate.
they'll grow up watching out for each other for the most
Yeah,
part. No matter
right,
like where they go in their careers or sports or anything like that. They're
yeah.
For the most part they'll be each other's number one cheerleader.
Exactly, and then they'll come together with their own families.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm getting, like, sappy here, but I was just thinking, 20 years down the line, they'll be together with their families, having gatherings and watching games during Thanksgiving, which
Yeah.
is in a few days. Together, you know what I mean? And I
Mhm,
think that
mhm.
will kind of kick up special memories, and they'll tell their kids, like, "I used to watch your uncle play."
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
'Cause they have an aunt and uncle
Yeah,
similar in their age,
right.
on their dad's side. Same thing, the uncle was the football star, the football player, the aunt was the older sister, just,
Oh,
empowering, looking out for him. And so, they've had a great example of it. And my little brother played football in high school, and I was like a cheerleader and I was always cheering him on. So
oh,
it's kind of like just it's fun to see that it's indirectly like
yeah,
a bit of a influence on them on both sides of the family, and just seeing them get closer, because technically at this age teenagers are constantly bickering and like
yeah,
fighting and all that stuff.
right.
But one thing that does make them watch out for each other and like cheer each other on is sports, and especially for Ari, it's been flag football, and his sister has like been at every game. She
Oh,
walks right over from her school first before even, her parents get there. And she's
wow.
watching him practice until the game starts, and just, being a support.
Yeah. Well, sounds like she has potential for coaching.
Definitely coaching and cheerleading,
Yes.
number one
And also baseball. It seems like, you have very, wholesome, well-rounded kids and, all props to you here and,
pass.
I still have a little bit of ways to go, but I love hearing, about these stories and just about like your kids and, their involvement with football and my husband family side is they're football
Yeah.
fans. Um, in that, even his great grandfather and his grandfather, um, I think we could turn their house into a museum,
Mm.
for the local team here in the Bay Area.
So
You guys
much.
don't know which team it is. But and even even when he was laid to rest, he was buried in the team.
No way.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. um,
Corn.
so it was very ingrained. Football
Yeah.
is what kind of brought his family together. Is what brought his dad closer to his father-in-law, and his uncles play football and things like that. And I could see it being trickled down right now, from my husband to my son,
Yeah.
um, and it's a wonderful thing to see that you're creating family traditions around this
Yeah.
sport,
Exactly.
and now all kids can participate in football, and
Yeah.
find their own strengths. In terms of, Ari and, the girls, and his other teammates, have you seen anything, developmentally that, you really appreciated, um, of what football kind of brought out of them? I know obviously you mentioned, his team spirit, but is there anything else, individually or, as a, coming to, they're going through that awkward teen phase right now.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
There's anything that, in particular as a football mom, you're like, oh, thank you for that.
I mean, I think probably one thing that amazes me is that when they get on the field, like there's no such thing as cliques, right?
Right.
It still exists. I mean, when I was in high school, there were groups. You had your groups, the cool kids, the nerds, the band, all that stuff, the jocks. But when these kids get on the field, like none of that exists. Like they're just one unit, one team.
Yeah.
And it actually slides over into their regular like hangout, lunchtime hangout, their breaks during school, in which they just circle around now. I mean, I asked my son the other day, I was like, who do you, because I had to go to school to pick him up and I could not find him in the crowd of kids. And I was just like, I know of his friends, and then he's not with that group, and he's not with this group. And so I had asked him, I was like, where do you hang out, when it's like lunchtime specifically? What's your specific crew, your circle that you hang out with? He's all like, I hang out with everyone. He's like, I rotate around all the time, Mom. I don't just stay with one group. And so,
right.
I mean, and it's what's fun to see, and I think is great, is that he's not the only kid that does that at his school. I mean, and a lot of those kids on the team, they circulate as well. I realized like there is no longer kind of like cliques, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they only stick together because of one mere interest that they all have together. Now it's just kind of everyone free flows around wherever they feel like it, and they just welcome each other in. And I think that's one of like the amazing things to see, because growing up it was so cliquish, and then all these TV shows that you watch and like
Mean Girls.
they show you belong either in one clique or another, depending on who you are, what you do, where you come from. And then with these kids, like they take that from the field into the lunch area, into their break time on the concrete, on the black what is it, the black top, where they just hang out and all that stuff. And so that's one thing that actually I feel really like, I guess it gives you hope that these kids are on the right path, right? Not just my own son, all these other kids and their parents are just doing a great job, because these kids are seeing beyond cliques, seeing beyond color, seeing beyond interests, and just having a good time with everyone and just welcoming each other and their different interests and stuff, and just getting along so well. So that's like the one thing that I've noticed, and I feel like it's really good to see. I hope it continues.
It's really encouraging to hear. That's one of the things that I have a worry about. Like when my son goes into preteen or teenhood, because what I know is what I've been through, and it was very, clicky way back when.
I mean,
the jocks,
the
jocks stay with the jocks, and cheerleaders or whatever, and so I think it's wonderful to see this, blended kind of harmony between all the kids, and I love that. Being on the football team really kind of helped them or reinforce that mindset. So that's wonderful. Like now I want to go sign up, and I want to check out, what leagues there are. Maybe I should sign them up soon for flag football. Well, thank you. I think this was such a fun chat.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was fun banter.
Yeah, it was such a fun banter. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but as we said, to anybody who is watching this video, if you have interest in signing your kids up for football or flag football here in the Bay Area, check out futureforfootball.com. And you can find out more information about the local leagues and the age groups and all that jazz for your children. And it's happy Monday and happy Thanksgiving, early Thanksgiving to everybody. So I hope everybody stays safe, stay healthy, and thank you again, Sysamone, for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Bye.